When the sun lowers toward the horizon and the sky turns black, when lines blur and things are not exactly what they seem, when the normal makes way for the strange and unexplained, it's time to question what is natural and what lies beyond our understanding. It's time to enter the edge of the unknown with your host, Mark Henry.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the Edge of the Unknown and hanging out with me on a Sunday night, as I want to do each and every Sunday night here on the All One Broadcast Radio Network. Really cool show coming up for you this evening, as always. A little bit different. Something that we haven't talked about that I obviously have been promoting for quite a bit here, and something that I'm very interested in. We have got a gentleman on to talk about conspiracy theories, and we're not just going to talk about, some of the things that we've touched on, what's going on in that Mason's Hall over there. We're going to talk about things that maybe are on a little bit larger scale. We're going to be talking UFOs. We're going to be talking HARP Project. We're going to be talking Denver Airport. We are going to be talking Bigfoot. We're going to be talking lake monsters. We're going to be talking about anything that might have a conspiracy theory behind it. Dr. Barna Donovan is my guest this evening. Before we get to him, I'm going to tell you, I've got a really great book in my hand. I was just telling him how much I like the actual paper that it was printed on. It's called Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places in the American Conscience. You can find that on Amazon.com, and it also is in Kindle format. And he's also got a couple of other books that are available there that we'll talk about throughout the evening. But couple of housekeeping points that I want to throw out to everybody as we get ready to ramp up into the Edge of the Unknown for this Sunday evening. Some really cool shows are coming up that I will be talking about throughout the next 2 hours. Next week, we've got Dr. Joyce Michael Flynn coming in talking about near-death experiences in her book, Turning Tragedy into Triumph. A very interesting story that she's got. She is a person who is a nurse practitioner and has a process of metahabilitation that she uses to help folks who have had near-death experiences ramp back into life and get over the trauma from a standpoint of someone who actually was clinically dead for 20 minutes. She's a great guest. It's going to be a lot of fun, so hopefully everybody will stick around for that. Quick break for the Super Bowl. We'll have a best of. When we return, Winter Lake will be on to talk about Satanism and black magic. A guy I've been tracking down for quite some time. We've had a lot of good conversations. He is ready to go. So right when we get back after the Super Bowl on the 9th of February, Winter Lake will be my guest. And just confirmed this week, Jim Sherman and Ron Bowles from the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, they have agreed. Actually, we had a big argument about hats. I'm a big hat guy, and we were talking about hats more than we were talking about Bigfoot when I was actually getting them to agree to the date that they were going to come on and talk about Bigfoot and the expeditions that they've been on. So hats and Bigfoot with Jim Sherman and Ron Bowles coming up on the Edge of the Unknown on February 16th. So we've got a lot of really cool stuff coming up, and I hope everybody will enjoy the show as I enjoy presenting it to you each and every week. Real quick, some stuff has popped up recently with I don't want to say a personal nature, but just some things that have been happening here in the Western New York paranormal area. This show does broadcast right outside of Buffalo, New York, and a polar vortex is apparently coming back. We already had a terrible one that dropped probably 2.5, 3 feet of snow in my driveway. It was not like that anywhere else. I don't know. Maybe it's karma or I made somebody angry, but the last one that came through killed my driveway. But I'm told that it's coming again, and on this wintry night here in Buffalo, New York, the winds are high. It is unbelievably cold, and so is some of the attitudes of people in this area as far as anyone's ability to talk about the paranormal or maybe actually take pot shots and tear other people down. I've said this before, live and let live. That's what this show is about. You've got an opinion. We have the best opinions on the show. Everyone is allowed to have them as long as they play nice. Unfortunately, some folks aren't playing nice, and a lot of folks are reaching out at me and taking some shots at myself, Mr. Mark Henry. And it was funny because I this morning I woke up and I thought of one of my favorite passages from one of my favorite novels by Joseph Conrad. It's a great novel called Heart of Darkness. If you've never read it, I suggest you do. If you've seen Apocalypse Now, you get the gist because that's what the movie is based on. But he has a really great saying in that, and this is the way I'm going to open up the show before we get to Dr. Barna Donovan and all the fun and festivities for the rest of the night. Marlowe, in Heart of Darkness, who is one of the main characters, says, "I don't like work. No man does. But I like what is in the work, the chance to find yourself, your own reality, for yourself, not for others, what no other man can ever know. They can only see the mere show and never can tell what it really means." Thanks for hanging out with me on a Sunday evening as you are kicking your week off or wrapping your week up. This is the Edge of the Unknown. If you want to get on board, please feel free to do so in a number of ways. We will have a new call-in number. And if you are live with us on all1broadcast.com, there is a live chat room. Click on that button. You can go and talk to the other folks who are listening in live. You can ask me questions there. I'd be more than happy to put those into the show. At the top of the page with the live chat room dialogue is a number excuse me, and that will be the number going forward. Tonight we're still going to be sticking with the old number, and actually I think Craig Eugene, who is the he's the operator of this radio station. I don't know if he's worked his magic, but he might have. The number to call me tonight, 716-393-9525. This is the last night to use that number. It will be deactivated, and we're just going to use a one number for all of the shows on All One Broadcast, so you can dial into the 717 number that you see there. It will be forwarded to all of the hosts on All One Broadcast. But for tonight, if you want to get to me, 716-393-9525. The Edge of the Unknown at gmail.com is the email address. As always, find me on Facebook, The Edge of the Unknown Radio Show. Like it, shoot me a message there, and we will get you on board this evening. So, without any further ado, my guest this evening, Dr. Barna Donovan, is a professor of communications at St. Peter's Jesuit University in the great state of New Jersey. I know people pick on New Jersey, but it's actually a pretty cool place if you've never been there. And he has written numerous articles, columns on film and popular culture. He has, as I have mentioned, written a book called Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places in the American Conscious, and we're going to be talking about that tonight. This guy knows what he's talking about, and we're going to delve into not only the questions that I have, but the questions that you have about these conspiracy theories. Is there something to them, or are they much ado about nothing? That's what we're talking about here on The Edge of the Unknown. Dr. Donovan, thank you so much for taking time out of your week for being on The Edge of the Unknown. How are you?
Hi, Mark. Thanks a lot for having me. This is fantastic. And I'm looking forward to listening to some of your upcoming shows. Some of the things that you were discussing there, previewing sound pretty good. So it's great being here.
Well, you are, honestly, you're more important than anybody else because we are live right now. And I can't thank you enough. I know we had a quick conversation. You were on your way back from Chicago, and you were actually dealing with the polar vortex that I was dealing with at the same time. But obviously it wasn't too much of a conspiracy theory because you got home safe, and here you are right now.
And luckily, yes, as I was flying toward New Jersey, too, and I always kept an eye out the window of the plane, hoping to, at one time in my life, I would like to see some unexplained thing, something or other flying through the air. I didn't see one, but I'm keeping an open mind about it all the time. But here I am back in New Jersey, and talking to you and your listeners.
Perfect. I'm actually going to follow up with something that you just said because I think it actually will add to the evening's discussion. But let's talk a little bit about, professor of communication. I went through a communications school at a state university of New York in Fredonia, and that's how I got involved in radio. you're obviously a professor of communication, but how did you branch out into talking about conspiracy theories? How does all that work together?
hmm Well, I remember when I started studying film back in the 1990s at the University of Miami, and I started developing an interest in social research and mixing media research and looking at how the media is reflecting culture. And around the time, that was when the X-Files TV show came on, and I became a big fan of it. And as the years went on, just the popularity of conspiracy entertainment just kept growing and growing. And it really occurred to me that it's so remarkable that just about any genre of entertainment that you can think of these days, sci-fi, action films, horror movies, there's always that element of the conspiracy theory, the government conspiracy theory, hidden cabals, the truth being kept from people. And I started thinking, what is it about this, and what's going on in our society right now that makes all this paranoia so popular? And it's turning up in entertainment. And I'm studying entertainment, I'm studying pop culture, and then this conspiracy stuff keeps coming in here. And so I thought, let me go and take a historical look at this.
Please.
So I thought, let me look at all the films over the decades that have dealt with conspiracy theories, and how every decade had the conspiracy theories out in the culture, and then how filmmakers and TV producers and writers, how they went and incorporated all of this into their entertainment.
So this is not something, honestly, when people think conspiracy theory, they think, oh, it's the government out to get you. But a lot of what we see in pop culture is really kind of based on those sorts of thoughts, whether it's in Area 51, there's aliens, or there's a sea monster over here, or there's a serial killer out there. A lot of that stuff is incorporated back into the TV, the movies, and what have you, that we see, or at least, we hear, or are aware of on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, right, absolutely, because I think smart entertainers or successful ones who stick around and their TV shows get ratings and their movies become popular, they understand that their entertainment has to reflect the culture. And over the past couple of decades, especially since the 1990s and onwards, and especially right now, we're just so fixated on conspiracy. So the conspiracy theory is going out in the culture, and now especially it's very easy to go and look at what are the real, or quote unquote, real conspiracy theories out there. But going on the internet, everybody who has a conspiracy theory, but just about anything. And still today, this is what fascinates me. That if you really want to study this, it's an ongoing project, because almost literally every single day there's a new conspiracy theory about something. Anything that's going on the news, someone's bound to have some idea about how what we heard about in the news is not really the truth, but they, the media or the government or the big business or somebody is really lying to you, and you're not getting the true picture. Like, I think just recently I read some on a conspiracy discussion page someplace on the internet, somebody claiming that sinkholes, there's all these stories of sinkholes on the news, that they're actually part of a government conspiracy. So I think this is fascinating. It's interesting to see how this kind of paranoia in the real world is seeping into entertainment.
That's very interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the minute that you talked about sinkholes, I thought of, and the name of the town is going to run out of my head, but the folks who are listening from Pennsylvania, you can let me know the name of this town. Obviously, right, the sinkholes is a big deal, because suddenly an entire home is swallowed up, and then it happens again, and it happens again, whether it's in California, Florida, wherever it might happen. There's a long history of sinkholes happening in the state of Pennsylvania, in heavy anthracite mining towns, where these towns are shut down. I guarantee the mainstream media has never heard of any of those occurrences that happened in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, but yet this now, with the sinkholes, is such massive, huge news. But it wasn't back then, and no one is actually looking back to look at it as possibly just a natural occurrence. It's got to be the feds.
Right, right. And probably what has a lot to do with why we see this on the news right now is, everybody has a smartphone in their pocket. So when they see their house about to slip into the hole, there's video, and it's really dramatic. So seeing a house go and sink down into the ground, or I remember seeing one news story where they showed a row of cars on a street as the street was collapsing, just one after the next, almost like a disaster movie. All the cars are falling in there. It's just good visuals. So, like you said, that this is nothing new, but now we just have the visuals, and the media can put these dramatic pictures up there. But and if you are conspiratorially inclined, then that's the next the next step in your thinking. Well, wait a minute. If we're only hearing about this now, there's got to be something much bigger, something sinister going on.
So, out of all of the conspiracy theories that you've looked at, and we're going to delve into those over the course of the next couple hours here on the Edge of the Unknown, what is the one that sticks out to you as the most viral, the one that will not go away, the one that it doesn't matter who is talking about conspiracy theories, that will be the one everyone will fall back on?
Mm-hmm. Well, probably the grand champion, the oldest of the conspiracy theories are the UFO conspiracy theories. Those have incredible staying power. I mean, now and again, some other things will come up, like we had the 9/11 conspiracies. There are the weather conspiracies after Hurricane Sandy. Some people thought that there's this secret, but it's actually not so secret. This HAARP project up in Alaska. Maybe they're controlling the weather there, but those kind of come and go. But the UFOs, they're the bread and butter of the conspiracy community.
Which is interesting because it's another one of those things that's kind of like a Sasquatch or ghosts. It can happen anywhere. And I think that possibly has the reason why it has staying power, because you could be anywhere. You could be in a downtown area, look up and see a strange aircraft flying over. You could be out in the middle of the woods and see something, or perhaps a ship landing. So when we talk about all that, how do we step back from a standpoint of making a rational decision on someone's story versus what is actually happening, and then applying that to, well, who is it really? Is it really alien invaders, or is it the government just doing something that they got caught that they didn't think anybody was going to notice?
I personally think that usually you have to look at the when they're making the claims about the phenomenon, and then whether or not there's more to it, and whether or not there's some kind of a conspiracy that's hiding the truth. I think that if the story's too complicated, like it would involve too many people to pull off, that's when I personally tend to start getting more skeptical. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm pretty open-minded about the UFO phenomenon. I've heard a lot of very plausible theories about how this could be something more than just cloud formations or mistakes. So I'm very open to the extraterrestrial or otherworldly nature of this phenomenon. But usually when you have a really convoluted conspiracy theory that would take hundreds of people to pull off, and there's no tangible evidence, when they can't produce anybody who will say that I was involved and I can prove it to you. I'll go on the record. I will give you some documentation, something tangible to hold on to. And that's when I start getting skeptical.
That's interesting. My guest this evening here on The Edge of the Unknown, Dr. Barna Donovan. We're talking about conspiracies. Check out his book, Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places and the American Conscious. You can find that on Amazon.com, and it's also in Kindle format if you want to read on your tablet or your smartphone. When folks are totally concerned about the credibility factor, and I know in the book you mentioned Betty and Barney Hill. A couple of weeks ago, I had Kathy Martin on, who's been on the show in the past, who is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. She has control basically of their estate. So she's got all of the documentation that went through their claim that they were abducted by aliens. Something like that. How do you draw the line from your standpoint of someone who is providing a whole bunch of evidence that wants everyone to really believe that this is what happened to them, But at the same time, what you just said, you kind of mentioned they're going a little bit overboard and maybe trying too hard. Is there a line that people pass when they want to tell everybody about their story when it comes to what might be considered a conspiracy theory?
I probably when someone's trying so hard to get attention, and you get the sense that they're trying to really cash in on their story, then it tends to become suspicious to people. I mean, it's suspicious to me if I'm told that they're doing most of their talking through their new literary agent, and they're trying to sell the movie rights. Which that's why I thought I was always impressed with the Betty and Barney Hill case, that these people were not. They were not attention hounds. They were not trying to get the movie deals and the book deals. I was also really impressed by the fact that the psychiatrist who did the hypnotic regression with them, he was a skeptic. He didn't believe that they had a UFO experience, because usually usually skeptics will say, when they're talking about the abduction phenomenon and how you have the hypnotic regression, is that maybe all those things are just implanted in their minds by an unscrupulous psychiatrist or hypnotist. And it really struck me that the person that they did the regressions with, he did not believe in the UFO. So he would not have been implanting these stories into their memories. So I'm very open-minded to the possibility that they're telling the truth, and this happened to them.
And even talking about, the cultural impact, Betty and Barney Hill, a mixed-race relationship at that time in this country was not something that was that popular. I mean, even though they were up in New Hampshire, they were really putting their quite honestly, their lives on the line, their well-being with friends, family, and the people up the street who might not have approved of that relationship. That had to have been a very tough hurdle to jump to make sure that they got their story out.
Oh, sure, absolutely. That not only are they telling this outlandish story about being taken by aliens, but they are a couple in a very sensitive time where just their relationship usually creates controversy or brings down a lot of hostility on them. So I don't see them coming up with this as an outlandish hoax to get even more publicity and possibly draw even more criticism on themselves.
My guest this evening here on The Edge of the Unknown, Dr. Barna Donovan. His book, we are talking about Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places in the American Conscious. We've kind of whet everyone's appetite about the whole idea of conspiracy theory, which is exactly what I want to do. And that's the way I try to run the show, if everybody is familiar with. I like to get the excitement built up, and then I want to talk a little bit more back to basics. How long have conspiracy theories been going on? Obviously, it's not something new just because of technology. Conspiracy theories go a way, way back before we had computers, phones, television, and the like.
Oh, absolutely. I think that probably the reason that I think today and they're always so popular is because this is just a part of human nature. And sure, like you said, people have always been suspicious of any large organization, any group of people with a lot of power. Maybe people who do things behind closed doors, whether they be wealthy or members of the government or any governments, royal families, the church, any kind of organization that has a lot of power, and you're going to be a little wary of that. You're going to be suspicious, and you probably should be. It's probably that's one of my opinions is that. Up to a certain point, conspiracy theories and thinking about them is pretty good. It keeps people skeptical about organizations of power, and like we said, that these kind of theories go way, way back. Back in colonial times in the Americas, there was fear of an organization like the Freemasons. What are they up to? They have all these secretive initiation rites going on. What are they really doing? What are they not telling us about? Going back even a couple of even before that, all over the world. It's not just an American phenomenon. You had in Europe, you had these theories that you have these elite groups up to one of my favorite ones was the elite groups up in the Himalayas. These ascendant masters, these people who somehow through some occult powers, occult rituals, they were able to gain all kinds of psychic, all kinds of superhuman abilities, and sometimes these people would go and inject themselves into government, basically into history, and steer humanity in certain directions. So it is an old concern that is there something more going on to the world than what we're being told. Really, that's what the conspiracy theory comes down to. This concern over whether or not there are elites out there, people who we can't see, but they have some kind of a power over our lives. Are they helping us, or are they hurting us?
And a lot of that, I mean, again, stems from just human beings sitting around a fire. If we're going to go back to medieval times and even farther back, no one trusts anybody who is their boss or their, the authority of the land. There's always got to be a motive, which is probably why it still maintains what it is, even though a lot of times the truth does come out, and probably something else that we can talk about, why the conspiracy theory still exists after the fact that a reasonable explanation has been given.
Oh, sure, absolutely. The thing is that the truth often comes out pretty fast. Because usually I say that one of the reasons that so many people are quick to jump onto conspiracy theories is that they have these almost like a tip of the iceberg mentality. That when we hear some kind of some sort of a scandal, maybe like a Watergate or Iran-Contra, right now with the NSA wiretapping scandal, we think, aha, so this comes out, and what else do we not know about? Like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. But I think that since these things come out, like you said, it's very difficult. I think it's always been very difficult to keep really, really humongous secrets. And that's why, personally, again, I tend to start becoming more skeptical when the charge of the conspiracy gets really, really complicated. It would involve thousands of people to pull it off. But yeah, usually it comes out like right now with the NSA scandals. It took one guy, Snowden. It took one man. This guy with he has a high school education, if I remember correctly, and he was able to deal such a blow to the government, to the NSA, that it's easy to become skeptical about the more convoluted, more Byzantine theories about how everything that we see every day is just a lie, and it's being controlled by elites from Area 51 or some secret hidden evil base or something like that.
Talking about that, let's start off the conspiracy theory in-depth discussion with Area 51. This place has been talked about for years. Whether it was they're using experimental craft, they're doing all kinds of strange things out there. You can't take pictures. There will be people coming up to you with black Jeeps and people running you off the road and don't take pictures, and all of that in the Nevada desert. Talk a little bit about Area 51, and actually an email just came in from Eric that wanted to talk a little bit about Area 51, but for the listenership, the conspiracy behind Area 51. What is going on out there?
Yeah, Area 51 is perfect for the conspiracy theories because what this is, and the government only admitted officially just recently that it exists, is it's this a sector of Nellis Air Force Base out in Nevada. It's close to Las Vegas, and going back to, it was established back in the early 1950s, where first the government was doing the atom bomb test there, and then later they built a facility where they were developing early experimental aircraft, like the U-2 spy plane was developed there, the SR-71 spy plane, also the stealth bomber, the stealth fighter. So it's essentially a development and a testing facility. And again, the funny thing is that the government did not officially say that, yes, this exists until very recently, only a couple of months ago, I believe. But since it is so super secret, and the security around it is so extreme, like investigators who tried to drive out there to take a look at it, they would find these signs all over the place saying that if you go beyond that, security has the legal authority to kill you. So they're not going to arrest you. They have complete authority to do with you whatever you want. So it's probably the most secret place in the country, if not in the entire world. So usually when you're going to withhold information like this from people, and you're going to go to such lengths to set up such airtight security immediately, I think fertile imaginations are going to start asking questions. Well, what's really going on there? They're telling us that they're testing aircraft, but are they doing something more? Now, what was always odd to me, though, is that the way that this was set out with Nellis Air Force Base, that there was one part of the public land around it that people had access to. I believe it was called Freedom Ridge, if I remember this correctly. But there was this mountain top where people were actually able to go up and get a glimpse into part of the base. And sometimes they sighted these very strange flying lights and strange-looking flying craft nearby, which they said, oh my God, this stuff does not look like conventional aircraft. It flies in very strange patterns. It flies, suddenly stops, changes directions, disappears into thin air. Could this be something more than terrestrial aircraft? So sort of building off of the Roswell UFO crash theories. You had the emergence of this the theory mostly in the 1990s, and that perhaps what's going on here is that the U.S. government has its hands on either extremely advanced aircraft or aircraft that has been back engineered from the crashed UFO from Roswell, or probably one of the most colorful theories is that at one point the U.S. government actually made contact with aliens, and they have this exchange program going on, where the government allows doesn't do anything about aliens abducting humans, and then in return we're being given alien technology to test out in Area 51. So definitely very X-Files-ish, very convoluted theories going on because of the extreme secrecy.
And that's why I'm gonna grab this email right here, theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com, if you want to get on board. You can also give me a ring, 716-393-9525, or the new number, 717-298-7460 is the number that we're going to be using moving forward. So you'll be able to use those at any time to get on the Edge of the Unknown. My name is Mark Henry. Thanks for hanging out with me on the Edge of the Unknown on the All One Broadcast Radio Network. If you're listening to us using the A1B station moniker through the TuneIn Radio app, hey, if you've got a computer in front of you, come over to all1broadcast.com. That's just all one, the number one, broadcast.com. Join us in the live chat room. We've got some questions coming in through there as well, and we'll get to those. But I'm going to get to this email because it was about Area 51, as I mentioned. Eric writes in, I'd like Dr. Donovan to talk about the phenomenon that happens when people are given perfectly good answers to conspiracy theories like Area 51, but promptly just pick another conspiracy about that place to latch onto. The government says experimental aircraft are housed and developed at Area 51, but everyone just then starts talking about how that technology is being tested and it came from secret sources, so on and so forth. It's amazing that we will never accept an answer for what it really is. Thanks for taking my thoughts. I'd love to hear what Dr. Donovan has to say. Eric, thanks for writing in. I appreciate you being on the Edge.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and really, this is how we were saying that this is probably part of human nature, that we want to believe, like there was the catchphrase back in the X-Files, that we want to believe in something bigger, something mysterious, something supernatural, and at the same time, we're also living at a time in American culture where we have seen so many scandals, so many examples of corruption, politicians, businessmen, the clergy, just about everybody that we thought that we could trust lie to us. When you combine these two factors, that we're just more suspicious than ever before, and then there's that part of us that's yearning for the unexplained, the supernatural, something fantastic, and that I think many people will prefer to think that the more exotic explanation, the dead alien bodies, or live aliens and the exchange program with the aliens, maybe that's something that they prefer to believe over something as mundane. It's just another experimental aircraft. And again, because we are so suspicious at this point in history, for many there's just that knee-jerk reaction to immediately think, well, if this is the official explanation, it has got to be a lie, because the government has lied to us so many times before.
Something that I wanted to talk about, but I know when I threw out this pitch to you that I didn't want to devote an entire show about presidential assassinations, especially the assassination of JFK, because 50 years, that happened, and that is one that seems to have a heck of a lot more staying power than a lot of others from a national and international standpoint. Right here in Buffalo, we've got the curse of McKinley and that whole thing that went down, and we've talked about that on the show before. But let's talk a little bit about that. Again, government involvement, right? It's not just that President Kennedy was assassinated. We've got all this other stuff happening, and then we have to do this and that and the other thing. But at the same time, there was other things that happened later on, and you talk about this in your book about the movie All the President's Men, where gentlemen from the journalism world delved into Nixon. It doesn't have the same sticking power, even though it's kind of the same thing where the government is out to screw everybody. What's the difference there?
I think it has a great deal to do with Kennedy himself. That Kennedy himself, JFK himself, just had such an incredible staying power that he was extremely, extremely popular for that short period that he was president. So many people were just so heartbroken. Probably even many people didn't even vote for him, but eventually they were moved by his charisma, his idealism. That it was just such a heartbreaking time in history. And Kennedy himself, I always see him like a movie star president. There's just something much more magnetic about him than so many other presidents that we had. That it's just so difficult, I think, to accept that here you have not only the most powerful man in the country, perhaps in the world, but somebody who's just so charismatic and so likable. And it's probably, again, so many people who weren't even born at the time, and you ask them who are some of the greatest presidents, so many of them would say was JFK. I wish we had another JFK. That it's just very difficult, I think, to accept that you have somebody like that, and he's being assassinated by such a lowly character like Lee Harvey Oswald. That you just want something. He's not worthy enough of being an assassin of somebody like a JFK. And then you have the other problems that he's assassinated before we can have a trial. So there's that whole air of mystery around the assassination. I mean, I've listened to a lot of people who were alive at the time who said that, well, if Oswald would have lived and if he would have had a trial, I would have been completely willing to accept that, yeah, he was the lone gunman. But it bothers me that he was killed by Jack Ruby, and those doubts are sticking in my head here. So I think all of those add up to that sticking power, the conspiracy theories.
And it's amazing. We actually should take a break in a second here, but I want to bring this up because now that we're talking about the JFK thing, I watched one of my favorite movies on Friday night that I haven't watched in a long, long time, The Right Stuff. And it's such a great movie. But when I take a step back now, looking at it differently, the way that, and a lot of folks, and actually someone in the chat room just said, hang on, I'm going to scooch over here. Dave actually says, I think Johnson and Hoover worked together to help eliminate Kennedy. Okay, so let's just hold on to that thought right there, and then we'll jump to The Right Stuff. The way that Johnson is portrayed in The Right Stuff is that he is a publicity-driven maniac that just wants to get his name out there. So in a way, even though it wasn't a conspiracy film, it kind of had conspiracy overtones, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. And a lot of the conspiracy theories, like Oliver Stone and JFK, pointed the finger at Johnson too. They say that Johnson, like you said, and like the film shows, he's this attention hound. That they claim that one of his burning slights, or one of those things that was torturing him, was that Kennedy became president and not him. That was something that was just eating at him, and that's also fueling the conspiracy theory that perhaps he might have had a hand in the assassination, just because he hated the fact that he was not the president, but Kennedy was.
And it's just, but I love how the paranoia seeps over into, hey, we're going to talk about the space program, and this is a really neat movie, but hey, we got to throw that in anyway, right? Why not? What the hell?
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah.
And again, that goes right to the point where you say people love controversy. They love to hear something a little off step. Hey, my guest this evening on The Edge of the Unknown, Dr. Barna Donovan. He's a professor of communications and media studies at St. Peter's Jesuit College in New Jersey. If you want to get on board, we would love to hear from you. 716-393-9525 is the way to get on board. That number, again, will be changing. If you're on live chat, there is a number right above the live chat at allonebroadcast.com, 717-298-7460. That will send you to me tonight, and that will be the number that we'll be using going forward. But we do have to take a fast break here. We got to pay some bills. And we'll be back right after that, but we want to hear from you. theedgeoftheunknown at gmail.com is the email way to get on board. We're having some fun talking about conspiracy theories this evening here on The Edge of the Unknown as we take you up until 10 o'clock. Broncos are headed to the Super Bowl. I do not have the other game on because I am dedicated and I'm going to focus just on this here radio program. So and I know other people are talking about it, but we'll see what happens with the Seahawks and 49ers. Everybody, stick around. We've got much more coming up here on The Edge of the Unknown. Want to hear from you. We'll be back right after this. More with Dr. Barna Donovan.
Looking for vintage clothing? Look no further than Vintage Wears Boutique at vintagewearsboutique.com. Women's classic jackets and coats, skirts and dresses, all just a click away. Check out the latest inventory online for pictures, sizing, and more. Have a particular item in mind you can't find anywhere else? Go to vintagewearsboutique.com. Still stumped? Try their personal shopper service and let them do the work. Find the best in vintage clothing at vintagewearsboutique.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us at vintagewears_ on Twitter, and see us on Pinterest and Tumblr. vintagewearsboutique.com, where the past is your style.
Hey there, A1B listeners. This is Medium Julie MacDonald, host of Medium at Large. Join me Wednesday nights on All One Broadcast, where together with my guests, we journey into the many different worlds and expressions of spirit. Through mediumship, astrology, nature, indigenous technologies, alternate universes, otherworldly messengers, and much, much more. You just never know where we're going to land. So strap your seatbelts and tune in to Medium at Large on A1B. Listen, it's the only place to be.
Mark Henry here for the cool cats at Natural Vapors with 2 locations in Western New York and online at naturalvaporsbuffalo.com. Natural Vapors offers a variety of e-cigarettes and accessories for those making the jump from analog smokes. Whether you're new to vaping or you're a seasoned user, Natural Vapors has what you're looking for. First-time vaping? Visit with their dedicated staff and they'll set you up with a starter kit that is customized for you. For the experienced vapors, they carry the latest smooth batteries and tanks by Kanger. And if you're looking for mods, they've got Innokin mods, custom wraps, and much, much more. Natural Vapors offers dozens of e-liquids to fit your flavor fancy, as well as wholesale e-liquids. And hey, all liquids are made in-house from USA FDA-approved ingredients. Don't take my word for it. Check them out yourself. 2 locations in Western New York, Southgate Plaza in West Seneca, and also in the Union Consumer Square Plaza in Cheektowaga. Not from around here or just don't want to leave the house? Order online at naturalvaporsbuffalo.com and have everything delivered right to your door wherever you are. That's Natural Vapors and naturalvaporsbuffalo.com. Tell them Mark Henry sent you.
Without chupacabras, there's nothing to talk about. Back to the edge of the unknown.
Of course, there's nothing to talk about without chupacabras, right? Come on, everybody loves chupacabras. I love chupacabras, but we're not talking about those. We actually might be able to get into that tonight. But we're talking about conspiracy theories here on the Edge of the Unknown with Dr. Barna Donovan. He is a professor of communications and media studies at St. Peter's Jesuit University in Jesuit College of New Jersey in the great state of New Jersey. I want to remind everybody, next week we are going to be speaking with Dr. Joyce Michael Flynn and her book, Turning Tragedy into Triumph, a metahabilitation, a contemporary model of rehabilitation for those who have suffered from near-death experiences. She has herself a very interesting story, very interesting woman, and I cannot wait to have her back on the air. But as we have been mentioning, you got to go check out this book, Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places and the American Conscious. And I also want to let everybody know you can check out Barna Donovan's blogspot site. It's just Barna, B-A-R-N-A, Donovan, DONOVAN.blogspot.com. He has lots of blogs up there. Actually, the one that popped right up was talking about what we were just talking about, the assassination of JFK, and there was some other lively chat concerning the other folks that were involved with that whole era of who was trying to get rid of JFK and where the country should go. Some interesting stuff that actually me, and I'm going to scroll right back up here, pardon me about that. They were talking, going back and forth about interest in Vietnam and so forth. So that is on the table for you. If you want to get on board, feel free to give us a call. We're taking your calls up until 10 o'clock, whether you're kicking your week off or wrapping it up. I am happy to bring you the most interesting topics in the world of the paranormal here on the All One Broadcast Radio Network, allonebroadcast.com. And for those of you who are coming in late or are listening on the other apps that you can get this radio show, if you miss it and you want to get another copy of it, you can always go to allonebroadcast.com, click on the on-demand button, find my show, and you can download the show in its entirety and find us on iTunes as well. The Edge of the Unknown radio show broadcast, or radio show, I should actually say Edge of the Unknown broadcast radio show. Does that even make sense? No, it doesn't. The Edge of the Unknown will have its own website coming up, and it's just been a little bit of time in development, but that will be available to you in the next month or so. So anyway, I'm going to shut up and get back to my guest. If you want to get on board, 716-393-9525, 717-298-7460, the Edge of the Unknown at gmail.com, your ways to get on board. And I kind of want to follow up on what we were just talking about as far as the whole JFK thing. Dr. Donovan, over time, whether it's something as violent and fantastic as an assassination, doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a conspiracy theory going on. There's tons of conspiracies about Ronald Reagan, his involvement with any number of other organizations. There's a conspiracy out there about the Bushes starting the war in the Middle East. There always will be conspiracy theories surrounding government and presidencies, no matter who's in office. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. That when you're dealing with people who have so much power concentrated in their hand, then it's going to just inspire suspicion, and it's going to give birth to these conspiracy theories. And probably it's a very good thing that we live in a country where you can have your conspiracy theories and talk about them, where you can accuse the president of doing all kinds of underhanded things and not only be arrested by the FBI in the middle of the night. So up to a certain point, I'm kind of glad for this, but at the same time, I also start getting nervous when the claims of conspiracies are getting extremely outlandish and people take on this mindset that just because I can imagine that it could happen, I believe that it did, even though I don't have any solid physical evidence for it. That's where I get uncomfortable, basically.
One of the comments that just came through in the live chat room at all1broadcast.com mentioned the mob, and that is a perfect segue because I just wrote in. I said, hey, I'm going to skip all these emails. Someone just wrote in asking a question about the mafia. Chris in Tampa writes, what's the difference between stuff that can be controlled by groups like sporting events, I guess, but no one ever thinks about the mob's influence on government and government projects. Any thoughts on the greater economic vision, Dr. Donovan? Chris in Tampa, appreciate you being on.
Oh, so the question is
I think what he's asking is the difference between blaming everything on the government, but how much influence does the mafia have? Because again, we know they exist. It's not a conspiracy theory, but how much do they actually play a role in anything that happens that affects everybody else? And Chris, if I'm wrong, write back and you can clarify that.
Well, with the mob was one of those parties that even with the JFK assassination, some of them blame the mob on this. Some believe that you had some gangsters from my hometown of Chicago, actually one of the suburbs I was close to, for having possibly a hand in the JFK assassination. Although the mob has been targeted. I guess probably the reason that we don't fear them as much as these government conspiracies is, the mob has been targeted by government prosecutors for such a long time. We've seen so many heads of really high profile heads of the mob always wind up in jail, and essentially you're dealing with an organization that's a collection of hoodlums. Street hoodlums who've made their way up from street level crime, essentially. That I think that's for most people, if you're thinking of the resources and the brain power, the concentration of expertise and weapons and technology that the government can have. I think more people tend to be more afraid of what the government can do to you than a collection of street criminals.
And that's the funny thing is, what a lot of times what affects people more might be the street criminals rather than these fantastical ideas of why does that continue to exist? Why does that continue to be the number one topic rather than something that might actually be happening up the street versus something that never might even come to fruition?
Well, I think it's just sounds sexier to be afraid of the government and their black helicopters and their surveillance of your.
Well, we've had a technical difficulty here, so we're going to try to get back with Dr. Barna Donovan. 1 second here. Suddenly that this is really technically terribly professional. So you're going to have to listen to a phone ringing for a minute, and we will edit this out. Dr. Donovan, how are you?
Pretty good. I think we got
disconnected somehow. Someone called in, and for whatever reason, the entire call got canceled. My apologies. You were in the middle of talking about the difference between folks who are more concerned about crazy theories versus things that might be actually happening up the street that will affect their daily life. My apologies for the technical snafu.
No problem. But yeah, I was saying that probably the fear of the government and their black helicopters and their secret agents and then satellites and things like that, the kind of stuff that you see in spy movies and action movies, it's just a sexier fear. It's something that gets our imagination worked up a lot more than being afraid of the drug dealers down the street, or gang members, or organized crime even.
So let's grab let's grab another email here. We've got Bill in Watertown, who writes in, why do people automatically assume that all strange projects or happenings with the governments are always evil and out to get us? Isn't it possible that they might be working on something that will help us with new food sources, better fuels, and so on in the future? Why is it always negative? Love the show. Bill in Watertown. Bill, thanks for the comments. Thanks for writing in and talking to Dr. Donovan.
Right, that's a great question. I would love to think about that. So why can't we, have good conspirators out there trying to do something positive, like we were talking a little bit before about old conspiracy theories about the ascendant masters off in the mountains of Tibet, where you had some theories that these people are actually trying to do something good, that they clandestinely inject themselves into history, and they go and try and steer history in a positive direction. But that seems to be out. We're not seeing conspirators anymore in such a positive light, and maybe there's something hidden. It's for our good. I think it's a sign of the times that we've seen so many instances of corruption, where you see people who break the rules, do things secretly just to benefit in some kind of a selfish way. So I think we just naturally assume that when somebody is doing something secretly, they don't have other people's or society's best interest at heart. That they're probably just out to line their pockets, out to get more power for themselves. It's just a sign of the cynicism of our culture, I think.
Let's grab a call here. 716-393-9525 is the way onto the Edge of the Unknown. You are on with Dr. Barna Donovan. Who's this?
This is Dave from Lovejoy.
Hey, Dave. How you doing? You're on with Dr. Barna Donovan. Have at it.
Dr. Donovan, my question is, and this goes back to the Kennedy case with the mafia. First of all, I'm pretty sure the mafia helped Kennedy get into the presidency. My question is, wasn't Johnson involved heavily with the Vietnam War and with the war effort with his interest in the helicopters they used? Wouldn't he have stand to lose millions of dollars if they never went into Vietnam?
See, the question's a little bit muffled. You're asking that, is it plausible that Johnson could have had something to do because it was in his interest to continue the war in Vietnam? Is that the question?
That's correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. It is one of the one of these tenets of the conspiratoriology. Let's just use that word with the JFK case, that the claim that Kennedy would have definitely pulled out of Vietnam, and that's not really the case. And most historians do dispute that. In fact, they make the argument that even in Dallas, when he was going there, he was prepared almost literally. He had a written speech in his pocket about Vietnam, where he says that ideally the U.S. should not stay in Vietnam long. However, we can only pull out of Vietnam once we can be absolutely certain that South Vietnam is not going to go communist. So Kennedy definitely would. I think that we know for certain, and again, most historians claim this, that he was. There's no sign that he was definitely going to pull out of Vietnam, and then Johnson was involved in this plot to kill him, to keep the war going and then escalate the war.
Well, can I ask you one more question? Why did they change the route that Kennedy took the day before, and with the security so high, they put it in the newspaper, they put it in the media, that this was going to be the new route that he was taking. Also, they removed the top of the vehicle that he was driving in, which was not supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the day of the assassination, and I've seen documentaries and read exact reports from people, from witnesses, that say that right after the shooting, that they went to the grassy knoll because that's where they heard and seen shots coming from. And that was the first place. They never went to the depository until a day later, and if I'm not mistaken, that an unknown eyewitness said they seen a gun coming out of the window. I'm going to let you go. I want to hear this. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Definitely a couple of interesting points are being brought up there. And the point about the removed top of the car, Kennedy insisted on that. So if the president was going to request that, then you were going to do it. And the fact of the matter is that you do have just tragic coincidences in life all the time. That they changed the route, and it just happened to go on go by the building where somebody like Oswald was working. Now, usually one of the things that conspiracy theorists like to say is that there are no coincidences, and the matter of fact that that the real world is full of coincidences. There are no coincidences in movies and in fiction, but this is just one of those tragic coincidences. I think. I think that this this is what the evidence seems to suggest. And as for the business about the grassy knoll, that yeah, you do hear from a lot of people who say that they heard the shots coming from there. Although you also have a lot of them who say they didn't, or there were a number of them that I read about who claimed that they saw the gun and pointing out of the school book building, and also with the layout of this is usually what people point out with the entire layout of Dealey Plaza, that it's almost like a canyon. That if you have gunshots going off, they're going to be echoing all over the place. So in a moment like that of extreme stress, when suddenly people are shocked by something like this, they can make mistakes, and they can make honest mistakes, especially when you have an echoing, you have a giant echo chamber. So usually I tend to be skeptical of this. At one point, I got to tell you, I was very, very open-minded about the Kennedy assassination conspiracy theories, especially the mob's role in it. But I don't see any solid physical evidence that's pointing to anyone other than Lee Harvey Oswald. So that's why I tend to be skeptical about the Kennedy conspiracies.
Dr. Barna Donovan, my guest here this evening on the Edge of the Unknown. You want to get on board, 716-393-9525. Also, 717-298-7460. You can shoot us an email, theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com, taking you up until 10 o'clock as we do each and every Sunday evening here on the All One Broadcast Radio Network. You can check out his book that we're talking about this evening, Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places and the American Conscience. And you can find that on Amazon.com, and they also have it in ebook form if you're interested in that. And also check out his blog, Donovan Media, which is at barnadonovan.blogspot.com. One of the things I wanted to talk about, and maybe we should take a little step back from the old government stuff, because it's super easy to talk about how the government is out to get us, and we already are pissed about taxes, and now we don't know about Area 51, and why are we funding this project? And I do want to talk about the HARP project, because that has come up in some emails that I've gotten over the past couple of weeks. But some of the more interesting theories about stuff that kind of has a very, very huge following, but not necessarily with the mainstream unless it's something that's a little bit more fantastic. Cryptozoology. Let's talk a little bit about your experience with the connection between creatures like Bigfoot, lake monsters, whether it's something that's in Lake Champlain or Loch Ness or any of the lakes around the round world. How does that all fit into conspiracy theory? Somebody is not allowing us to know the truth about what is running around in the woods.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I remember, I forget what program this was on TV. Somebody mentioned, I love this conspiracy theory. It's just so neat, and I want this so much to be. I really hope that something like this could be proven true, but. It involved Bigfoot, and the argument that up in the Pacific Northwest, the logging companies know that Bigfoot exists, or you have a, I guess, well, it would be the plural of Bigfoot, it would be big feet or Bigfoots, but that there's a population of these creatures up there. However, if they would ever be discovered, if somebody would be able to bring or drag a dead Bigfoot or even a live Bigfoot out in front of the world and prove this, and then prove that you have other creatures like this living up there, then these things would be declared an endangered species. And that would suddenly have an impact on the logging industry. So that possibly the conspiracy here is that the logging industry is working very hard to debunk the idea that these creatures are out there. So that's kind of colorful. I read a novel where that was the plot as well some years ago, and I forget what's called off the top of my head, but I thought that's a really novel conspiracy theory. And we've seen in history that there have been creatures like up to one point with the mountain gorillas and in Africa. They were for a long time they were considered to be a myth, and it turns out to be true. So I'm definitely very interested in all of the cryptozoological theories, the speculation. It'd be great if we would be able to find more of these creatures. But given the conspiratorial impulse, the fact that we haven't found many of these things, other than the mountain gorilla, or at one point some prehistoric fish that was thought extinct for millions of years was found off the coast of Africa someplace. Those were very suspicious, very very paranoid. They hatched these theories that maybe the reason that we're not finding them is because it's in someone's interest to keep the creatures hidden, say like with the logging companies in the Pacific Northwest. Other people argue that maybe it's just the nature of scientists, that if they kind of hitch their wagons to saying that the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist, or Bigfoot doesn't exist, or Chupacabra, or anything like that, that these folks don't like to go and suddenly admit, aha, well, I was wrong, sorry about that. Look, there's Bigfoot after all. I was wrong. I don't know everything.
I got a quick question for you here that I just wrote down while you're talking about this. And actually, I wrote down 3, which is what I want to do. And this kind of ties into what you were just talking about and the question that I asked prior, and the whole idea of the government being involved in this. And I guess this is really kind of one of the granddaddy questions. Do you think the government encourages the media and Hollywood to produce entertainment to perpetuate conspiracy theories, to cover up what might really be going on? Do they actually want the Die Hard 2s? Do they want the Lethal Weapon movies? Do they want all of this sort of thing to be created to just assuage any thoughts that we might have of actually looking into what the government might actually be doing behind our backs?
Right. There are some who believe that. There are some who believe that the government is actually, I believe some years ago, I forget the year, somebody wrote a book to that effect, saying that the government is trying to encourage Hollywood to keep making films about evil aliens. To have us believe that if we were to ever make contact with aliens, that we need to fight them. So you do have these theories that say that the government is trying to influence filmmakers and artists. There's a theory that says that the government is encouraging a lot of the really fantastic conspiracy theories about UFOs and aliens and the supernatural, so that most people will think, well, this is all Hollywood fantasy. It's nice in a movie, but I can't take any of this seriously. So that it's essentially to make people hostile to the real idea that you would have, all kinds of very realistic criminality and very down-to-earth conspiracies going on in the country. And usually the down-to-earth conspiracies that the believers in this point of view point to is that maybe the government, along with heads of industries, heads of corporations, are attempting to bring about a big controlling fascistic world government that will be taking away most of our rights. So I'm not sure if that makes sense. If I'm getting the argument across.
No, I think it's really interesting, because most of the films that are out there concerning, and I'm just going to tee off on when you brought up aliens, where they're always violent, whether it's Independence Day or even the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, which actually had more of an environmental message when it first came out in the 50s. Everything is always about destruction, death, and here they come. They're going to wipe us all out. Even Mars Attacks, which is a hysterically funny film, has the same sort of slant to it. I took my wife to see, the name of the movie just ran right out of my head, Dark Skies. And even that was about not being able to trust anyone and not knowing what reality was anymore. And there's the weirdo guy who is, researching all this. You can't trust him, but he seems to be the one who has got his finger on the pulse. It makes everything confusing, and it always seems to be that way, rather than some of the other wonderful films that we've seen, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that seemed kind of scary, but had a really neat message at the end.
Right. And I remember reading that after the film Independence Day came out, that the people who usually gather in Roswell or in Nevada, close to Area 51, and they get together and theorize about the aliens, they were very, very angry at that film. Because they said that you have this not so subtle message going on there, that what the government is doing at Area 51 and lying to us about what's happening and lying to us about aliens is good. That basically the conspirators are the good guys in that, and the aliens are evil, and they were not happy with that film at all. And they felt that it was, of course, that creates its own conspiracy theory that was really government propaganda, that the government went and got these filmmakers to, Roland Emmerich, the director of the film, to create this pro-government, pro-conspiracy, pro-secrecy propaganda film.
When did conspiracies become a danger to the folks who are really into it and those around them? And I will follow up with something that actually happened here in the Western New York area. But is there a line that has to be drawn when somebody is no longer just looking at it as, hey, the government's out to screw us, or something's happening over there and we need to know about it, but they're not telling us? When does that actually become something that everyone should be concerned about?
Oh, yeah, that's an excellent point, because oftentimes I think about that myself. I discuss that because I teach a class on conspiracy theories and pop culture at St. Peter's, and I discuss this with my students that on the one hand, this is kind of fun, speculating, what if, but is there a line? And actually, just recently, I was looking at a web page at this discussion board where they were discussing the chemtrail conspiracy theory, about how you have these secret government planes, and sometimes not even government planes, but airliners that are working for the government to be spreading these chemical trails into the air that's supposedly poisoning us, that's supposedly changing the environment, or used for mind control, and all these far out things. And then there were a lot of people who were posting things like, "I would love to blow up these planes." Or if I want to we should form militias and get rocket launchers and blow up these planes that are spreading these chemtrails. So that's where I think it becomes scary, where people believe that these conspiracies are so evil that you have to fight back with violence, that you have to blow up planes, that you have to attack people. I mean, that really concerns me. I mean, that's an extreme. And also just what really also worries me is when all of this obsession with paranoia and not being able to trust the government, it goes to the length where people will say, oftentimes you hear young people saying this, that, there's no point in being politically active. There's no point in voting. There's no point in getting involved or trying to change anything, because there's a big conspiracy that controls anything, anywhere. I think that's dangerous. I think it's dangerous for democracy, where the suspicion gets to the cynicism, and where people say, "Well, I'm just not going to do anything because I don't have power anyway."
Let's take a fast break here on the Edge of the Unknown. My name is Mark Henry. We're talking to Dr. Barna Donovan. He is a professor of communications and media studies at St. Peter's, the Jesuit College of New Jersey. Check out his book, Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places in the American Conscious. We're talking about conspiracy theories here this evening on The Edge. Taking you up until 10 o'clock. You want to get on board, shoot me a question, theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. 716-393-9525 is your way to get on board via the phone. 717-298-7460. Also the way to get on board. Much more coming up. More of your questions if you're on the live chat room. Love to hear from you there. all1broadcast.com. Join us. Shoot me a message there. We'll get it over to the good doctor. Much more coming up, as I said, here on The Edge of the Unknown. Thanks for hanging out with me late on a Sunday evening. We'll be back right after this.
Hey everybody, this is Medium Julie MacDonald for All One Broadcast, the best station for paranormal and all things spirit. At A1B, there are no canned, pre-recorded shows. Join us and interact with our hosts in our live chat room. Ask questions. Get answers. All fresh, all live, all the time. Join us at A1B, the only place to be.
Looking for the best in vintage clothing? Look no further than Vintage Wears Boutique at vintagewearsboutique.com. Women's classic jackets and coats, skirts and dresses, all just a click away. Check out the latest inventory online for pictures, sizing, and more. Have a particular item in mind you can't find anywhere else? Go to vintagewearsboutique.com. Still stumped? Try their personal shopper service and let them do the work. Find the best in vintage clothing at vintagewearsboutique.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us at vintagewears_ on Twitter, and see us on Pinterest and Tumblr. vintagewearsboutique.com, where the past is your style.
Hey everyone, Mark Henry here from The Edge of the Unknown, coming at you every Sunday night from 8 to 10 Eastern on the All One Broadcast Radio Network. Heading our way on Sunday, January 26th, Dr. Joyce Michael Flynn stops by to talk about her approach to metahabilitation with near-death experience survivors. We'll explore her process as well as her book, Turning Tragedy into Triumph, and her own personal experience with NDEs. I hope you'll join me this Sunday night at 8 with Dr. Joyce Michael Flynn. Hang out in the live chat room at allonebroadcast.com. Catch it on your smartphone or tablet with the TuneIn radio app, station A1B. And if you miss anything, download the show on our on-demand section or find me on iTunes. That's The Edge of the Unknown with me, Mark Henry, only on the All One Broadcast Radio Network, the Internet's best destination for paranormal talk.
What's that? Who's there? I don't know. But this here is Mark Henry, and you're listening to The Edge of the Unknown.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me on The Edge of the Unknown. This is the All One Broadcast Radio Network. Lots of cool stuff coming up for you in the following weeks. As you just heard a quick promo there, Dr. Joyce Michael Flynn will be my guest next week talking about near-death experiences and how she helps those who have gone through a similar fate with metahabilitation. In her book, Turning Tragedy into Triumph. She will be on The Edge of the Unknown. Quick break for the old Super Bowl weekend, but when we come back, we're going to have Winter Lake on, talking about Satanism and black magic. Very interesting fella. Lots of books that he has written, and he is going to be hanging out with me a little bit late on a Sunday evening. Jim Sherman and Ron Bowles will be my guests on February 16th talking about Bigfoot. They are members of the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, the BFRO. Check them out, bfro.net. Lots of cool stuff coming up here on The Edge of the Unknown. And I was actually, I mentioned in the chat room at allonebroadcast.com to someone who was asking about Stan Friedman. The Pennsylvania chapter of MUFON is going to have their annual conference coming up in, I believe, in April, and I can actually verify that. But John Ventry reached out to me. He is the state director, and I mentioned to him we wanted to have another, what I call the Monsters of UFOs Summit. It's a big roundtable, 3 hours of really cool discussion from lots of really interesting folks from the world of the UFOs. We're going to be doing that again. Last time it was, holy cats, we had a whole bunch of guys. Stan Friedman could not do it, and unfortunately he was out of town. This time, hopefully we'll be able to square him up with this. But Bob Golgansky from the Western New York area, Dr. Phil Hasley from Niagara Community College was on, as well as John Ventry, and oh my gosh, who else was on? We had a whole bunch of people. It was a crazy night, but it was a lot of fun, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing. So we're going to try to square that up before they actually have the show and the conference down in I think it's Pittsburgh, but I might be wrong about that. But we're going to also talk about that. But we're talking about conspiracy theories here this evening on The Edge of the Unknown. If you want to get on board, 716-393-9525 is the way to do so. 717-298-7460 will also get you on the show. theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. If you're not already following me on Facebook, would love for you to do so. Just look for Edge of the Unknown radio show, like the page, and you can find me there. And again, we are talking on the live chat room at allonebroadcast.com. If you want to find us there, just log on, jump in, ask me any questions that you'd like. I will relay them to Dr. Barna Donovan. Dr. Donovan, again, thank you so much for hanging out with me on a Sunday evening. Hopefully you're still enjoying the show. You're not too bored yet. We've got much more to cover in the next half hour.
Oh, absolutely. Now, this is fantastic. Having a good time.
Excellent. I'm going to grab you know what? I'm going to ask you about this first because an email came in from Annie. And Annie, hang on. Hopefully you're still listening and you didn't leave. But I want to ask about the HARP project. And this is something that has been covered by a number of conspiracy theorists, the folks that are really into it. I know, who's the old wrestler who turned... Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura did a huge show on his show about conspiracy theories, talking about the HAARP project, which is the High Frequency Active Oral Research Program based in Alaska. Now, there's a lot of people, Dr. Donovan, that will say what they're doing up there is creepy and it's scary and they don't want anybody to know. And then there's the government response of, hey, you can come in here. We do tours every Thursday. Can you talk a little bit about what you know about HAARP?
Well, hi. That's pretty much what my understanding of this is as well. Is that you have this a facility up in Alaska where they're testing how to develop better radio communication systems. And as I understand, they're attempting to they're sending up radio signals into the ionosphere up to the upper. The top level of the atmosphere, and doing tests on how you can go and bounce particles off of that as the Earth is curving. And apparently they're testing methods of better communicating by that process around the world. Even apparently it's supposed to be, if it works, a better communication method than even using satellites. That it's supposed to be able to help people communicate from the U.S. to submarines on the other side of the world. But essentially, what the scientists are saying is that to be able to do these tests, they are shooting these particles that are essentially heated. They're heating up the electrons of the ionosphere from the Earth, but it's entirely from a bottom-up process, and this is having an effect on the ionosphere up directly overhead. And the argument is that what they're heating up is nowhere near using as much power as the ionosphere would be hit by from solar radiation, or they're not concentrating any more power into anywhere. As a matter of fact, much less power into one part of the atmosphere than you would get from an average lightning strike. So that's basically and I'm not an electrician or electrical engineer or physicist, but this is the science of it that I understand. Now the conspiracy theorists are concerned that what they're really doing is they're controlling the weather. That's one of the theories, that they're attempting to use this as a mind control device. With the weather control theories. The big hurricanes and the tornadoes in the Midwest have been blamed on this, and that Hurricane Sandy was blamed on this device. Oh, and also in 2003 with the space shuttle disaster, some of the conspiracy theorists are saying that the space shuttle accidentally flew into this energy beam coming up from a HAARP, and there was an accidental destruction of the space shuttle. But like you said, that the government says that there's nothing closed by this place. There's nothing secret. We go and give tours. They have an internship program where you have grad students from universities all across the country who are coming up there. They're using their data. They're doing experiments up there. These things are published in academic journals. So. Yeah, it's the argument, and I think it's a pretty solid argument that if you're trying to manipulate the weather, you're not going to be opening your doors and letting grad students from all over the country come traipsing through there.
And that's the scary thing, is that if you do make actual arrangements, I'm sure there are people who would be more than happy to talk to you what's happening there, but it's more fantastical to talk about a strange sound. I mean, if you go onto YouTube, there are hundreds of people who will say, I heard a strange noise, and it must be the HAARP project because it's warm today and it's February.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure, right. And it's also, interesting about when they talk about who has access to this, which really, I think was eye-opening to, just a cultural facets of conspiracy beliefs with Hurricane Sandy, that depending on where you stood politically, it determined what your beliefs about this were. Some who were supporting President Obama, they said that it's Mitt Romney and has wealthy big business cronies who actually have control over HAARP, and they created Hurricane Sandy here to keep all the Democratic voters in New Jersey and New York from the polls. And then you had the other side who said, well, it was actually Obama, and he called supposedly Alaska and said, hey guys, could you go and send a hurricane down to New York because I wanna look good in front of the camera. So you can see how something like this becomes this belief system Rorschach test. Even depending on what you already believe in, that's what you're going to go and make yourself believe about something like HAARP.
And that actually is something that I want to talk to you about. I'm going to get to this email right here before I get back to what I was bringing up before about getting too much into conspiracy theories and it being dangerous. Annie writes in, I'd like to talk about weather patterns. Any thoughts on why things happen the way they do, the way that we're told? If global warming is true, why would the powers that be allow it to happen knowing full well it will affect them negatively just like everyone else, financially and otherwise? Annie, thanks for being on the edge. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good question. That especially now the science is so conclusive that really actually I read a piece on this a little while ago that if you were to sit down and actually look at the peer-reviewed published research on climate change over the last 10 years, 99, actually more than 99, literally, you can only find one paper that was published by a scientist out of Russia that doubts that global warming is happening and that it's caused by human technology. However, the technology that causes it. It's the things that we enjoy, the things that factories produce, that we like, the cars that we're driving. So it's in theory, everyone says that they're worried about the changing weather patterns, about global warming, about climate change, but to actually politically do something about it and do something that's only going to make cars much more expensive, or the way that you're going to be heating your house much more expensive, all of a sudden people tend to vote with their pocketbooks. So politicians are not going to be very proactive in doing something about this.
Where do we have to draw the line, though, with this? A friend and a former colleague, coworker, a couple of weeks ago had an unfortunate episode here in upstate New York where he was... It's a long story, and I don't really want to get into it here, but I will get to the gist of it. The police were called to his house in the middle of a blizzard we had a couple of weeks ago. He was in his backyard with a loaded pistol. He is a licensed pistol holder. Convinced that people from the government were spying on him because of his outspoken commentary as a talk show host against the governor of New York State and the SAFE Act, where he actually thought that people were crawling around his house using snowshoes that don't leave footprints, so on and so forth. Suddenly, it's no longer a concern that I think every American should have about their rights being taken away, but now all of a sudden it's people are going to be put into danger. Do you see that happening a lot, whether it's a legitimate concern or stuff that we just get fed from the media?
Mm-hmm. Right. That I think it's a legitimate concern that some people will become that paranoid, that they're going to get their guns and maybe they see something moving in their backyard and it's the neighbor taking out the trash, but they think that it's the CIA assassin coming to shoot them. So now I would like to have these people consider that. Look, we have somebody like it's like a Rush Limbaugh who has said so many hostile things about so many Democratic presidential administrations, and he's still alive and well, and no one's coming to assassinate him. That you probably don't have too much to worry about, or somebody like a Michael Moore or Oliver Stone that they have been so critical of, definitely of George W. Bush and Republican administrations. That if these people are around, then whatever you're doing, whether it's on your radio show or your blog or your Facebook page, most likely the men in black are not coming to assassinate you.
I've done shows like, we're talking like this, and I've done other shows. I would really hate to think that the government would waste any time following a schlub like me around. I'm not that exciting. I mean, I'm just a PR guy by day, and I have a fun show on Sunday night. Why would anyone think that the government is out to get them?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Oh, sure. And I think these people just need to take a look at the bigger picture. Back during the George W. Bush administration, there were so many books, all full of bookstores. We had more bookstores out. Now it's all electronic, but there's so many things that were so hostile to his policies in Iraq, and yet nobody assassinated the writers. So definitely they need to have a little more perspective. But I think this kind of paranoia, especially when it's going to start involving weapons, then it troubles me.
My guest here on the Edge of the Unknown, Dr. Barna Donovan. Check out his book, Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places in the American Conscious. We're talking about conspiracy theories here on the Edge of the Unknown, taking you up until 10 o'clock. If you want to get on board, 716-393-9525, 717-298-7460, your ways to get on board. If you want to shoot me an email, please feel free to do so, theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. And you can always shoot me an email during the week. I will respond to you immediately. If you've got an idea for a future show, would love to hear from you that way. So let's talk a little bit about, and you kind of talk about this too, the paradox. It's something that we shouldn't possibly, or not, I want to say possibly, maybe it's something that we shouldn't necessarily pay attention to, but if we don't pay attention to the stories that are out there, we're also equally as guilty for not talking about it. How do we actually deal with the conspiracy theories while maintaining an even keel when talking about it and wanting to understand exactly what's happening?
Mm-hmm. Right. That I think it's important that we maintain a healthy level of skepticism about or caution about organizations of power, because there's an old saying that they usually tell journalism students that if your mother says she loves you, check it out. To go and have a healthy level of cynicism about people who have power over you. However, you need to be able to think about what can you prove, and what kind of threats are real threats or legitimate threats, and ultimately can you prove that this organization, this branch of the government, this corporation is doing whatever shady things, whatever underhanded or illegal things, and we need to constantly keep proof in mind. Whatever claim that you make, you need to be able to prove it. That's a big problem with the extreme conspiracy theorists, is when they say that, well, if I can imagine that this is true, then it's probably true. Or if I can imagine that it would be in someone's interest to be doing something, then they probably caused the event. So that's not good enough. So be skeptical, but what can you prove as being realistic?
And that's really the hard thing, especially when we talk about the paranormal. What we normally do each and every weekend here on the Edge of the Unknown we can't really prove anything one way or the other, but we have to be very careful about how we go about discussing it, not shooting down people who have valid concerns, and not shooting down those who are skeptical against anything that might be an easy answer for them. I mean, the whole group has to work together, but I'm afraid it probably never will actually happen that way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. Ideally in a democracy, you should have this a marketplace of ideas where everybody should be able to sit down as friends, and we might disagree, but let's listen to each other's points of view. We might maybe even learn something about from each other, and I think that unfortunately we're also in a moment in our culture when we don't like to sit down and have a constructive discussion with people that we disagree with. Like, unfortunately, not all talk shows on radio or on television or as decorous as your show. That then most of them it's almost like a verbal wrestling match. It's all about the digs, about the insults, about zinging each other. It's just we're living in this culture of I think incivility and just rudeness, which is troublesome. It's not good, I think.
And that's really one of the toughest things is to, as I mentioned, keeping an even keel with folks who are very passionate on one side of an argument and folks that are very passionate on another side of an argument. They have to realize that there are those out there that can't take sides. They have to just get their information, make their own decision, and then be their own person without actually having to draw a line in the sand with everybody else. Would you say that's a fairly reasonable way to approach conspiracy theory?
Well, probably, yeah, definitely. Because I mean, oftentimes I find myself in that position that you have some really good arguments from a lot of very intelligent people, and it's difficult to always keep yourself on the fence and say, well, I'm going to keep an open mind, and I'm not going to fall into any of the extreme camps.
Hey, let's do this. Let's take a fast break here. We've got a couple of minutes left if you want to get on board. 716-393-9525, 717-298-7460. Chat room is continuing to just give me a hard time here. They want to talk about the moon landing. Are you up to talk a little bit about the moon landing when we get back, Dr. Donovan?
Oh, sure. They have some real doozies of conspiracy theories about that.
Perfect. So we can talk about that. We are talking about conspiracy theories here on the Edge of the Unknown. My guest, Dr. Barna Donovan. If you want to check out his blog page, it is barnadonovan.blogspot.com. Check out his books. They are available on Amazon.com. The one we were talking about mostly is Conspiracy Films, a tour of dark places in the American conscious. Much more coming up here on the Edge of the Unknown as we approach 10 o'clock. Thanks for hanging out with me on a Sunday evening, late, as the polar vortex crushes the Midwest on the way to the East Coast. We're back right after this.
Looking for the best in vintage clothing? Look no further than Vintage Wears Boutique at vintagewearsboutique.com. Women's classic jackets and coats, skirts and dresses, all just a click away. Check out the latest inventory online for pictures, sizing, and more. Have a particular item in mind you can't find anywhere else? Go to vintagewearsboutique.com. Still stumped? Try their personal shopper service and let them do the work. Find the best in vintage clothing at vintagewearsboutique.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us at vintagewears_ on Twitter, and see us on Pinterest and Tumblr. vintagewearsboutique.com, where the past is your style.
Hey there, A1B listeners. This is Medium Julie MacDonald, host of Medium at Large. Join me Wednesday nights on All One Broadcast, where together with my guests, we journey into the many different worlds and expressions of spirit. Through mediumship, astrology, nature, indigenous technologies, alternate universes, otherworldly messengers, and much, much more. You just never know where we're going to land. So strap your seatbelts and tune in to Medium at Large on A1B. Listen, it's the only place to be.
Mark Henry here for the cool cats at Natural Vapors, with 2 locations in Western New York and online at naturalvaporsbuffalo.com. Natural Vapors offers a variety of e-cigarettes and accessories for those making the jump from analog smokes. Whether you're new to vaping or you're a seasoned user, Natural Vapors has what you're looking for. First-time vaping? Visit with their dedicated staff and they'll set you up with a starter kit that is customized for you. For the experienced vapors, they carry the latest smooth batteries and tanks by Kanger. And if you're looking for mods, they've got Innokin mods, custom wraps, and much, much more. Natural Vapors offers dozens of e-liquids to fit your flavor fancy, as well as wholesale e-liquids. And hey, all liquids are made in-house from USA FDA-approved ingredients. Don't take my word for it. Check them out yourself. 2 locations in Western New York, Southgate Plaza in West Seneca, and also in the Union Consumer Square Plaza in Cheektowaga. Not from around here or just don't want to leave the house? Order online at naturalvaporsbuffalo.com and have everything delivered right to your door wherever you are. That's Natural Vapors and naturalvaporsbuffalo.com. Tell them Mark Henry sent you.
Without chupacabras, there's nothing to talk about. Back to the edge of the unknown.
And we haven't even talked about chupacabras. Okay, we already said that. I love chupacabras. Chupacabras are amazing. My guest is here this evening on the Edge of the Unknown is Dr. Barna Donovan. Check out his book, Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places and the American Conscience. We're going to get right back to the conversation. If you want to get on board, we're taking you up until 10 o'clock this evening, hopefully expanding back to the 3-hour format that I was on not too long ago, but we're still working our way through that. I've gotten the go-ahead and the green light from the folks who run this here radio station, all1broadcast.com, and but it's a matter of making sure that I can swing that. And all the guests that come on the show are good with that as well. So that's coming down the pipeline. Again, as I mentioned, we've got some cool guests coming up in the next few weeks. Dr. Joyce Michael Flynn next week talking about NDEs. Winter Lake will be talking about Satanism and Black Magic on February 9th, and on February 16th, Jim Sherman and Ron Bowles from the Bigfoot Field Research Organization will be my guests. But right now, we've got an excellent guest on the line. I'm having a blast with him. Hopefully you are at home, and hopefully he is too. He hasn't hung up on us, so he must be interested in the conversation. theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com, your email address to get on board. From the chat room, Dr. Donovan. The moon landing, one of the biggest conspiracy theories I think that is out there outside of the JFK assassination. Mm-hmm. Did we really land on the moon, or was this all shot in some studio in Hollywood or some backlot in Disney? Who knows? What are your feelings about this? Let's kick this one around for a few minutes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a really good one. And also, I think this inspired one of my favorite conspiracy theory films from the 70s, 1979, if I remember correctly, called Capricorn 1, where the plot was one of O.J. Simpson's early films, but it was where the plot was about a fake mission to Mars. And it was inspired by this conspiracy theory, and the conspiracy theorists, by the way, say that if it was fake, it was done actually in where else? Area 51. You know, everything connects. But their argument, and most of this is coming out of one book that was written about this in the early 70s. It was this self-published book by a man called Bill Kaysing. who usually his supporters identify him as a former NASA official. What he really was, in fact, was an archivist who worked for NASA, basically like a librarian for a while. But essentially, he wrote a book where he claims that the entire moon landing was a hoax, that was faked. And you have various outlandish ideas about why it was done. Now, to be fair to Casing, he did not say that the reason, like some of the outlandish theories claims, was because we knew that there are aliens on the moon and they would be hostile. But his argument, and more of the semi-plausible arguments, are that NASA knew that they could not perfect the technology by the end of the 60s. Because back in the beginning of the decade, JFK said that we need to get a man on the moon, and so the theory here says that much of the space race was really about politics and not even science. That we needed to do something that would outdo the Russians, and that it was all U.S. versus USSR politics, and the Russians got the first satellite into space, the first animal into space, the first man into space. So we need a really, really big first, and we need to have somebody. We need to have men on the moon by the end of the decade. But according to Casing, what happened was that NASA realized that the technology wasn't perfected and it couldn't be done. So they went and orchestrated this great big hoax on sound stages right in the desert in Nevada at Area 51, and they faked the entire landing. So this is the theory. The arguments that they make for this, they point to things like what looks like a flapping flag on the moon, and they're going to argue that there's no atmosphere up there, so the flags can't flap. They're arguing that when we see the astronauts, jumping up and down, they're really being pulled by strings, and the speed of the camera is being manipulated, and things like those little rover machines that the astronauts were riding around, they wouldn't be able to fit into the lunar lander. So these are some of the big or space radiation. That's one of the other arguments, is that the space capsule and the moon lander wouldn't have been able to shield them from the radiation in space well enough to keep them from essentially dying from radiation poisoning. So that's the theory. Now, the counter argument, which I think usually is the strong argument from those skeptical of these charges, is that something like that would have taken so many people to pull off. It would be just so incredibly complicated to do this that it's very, very hard to imagine that you wouldn't have more people coming forth with solid, tangible evidence for this. They dispute the issue with the flapping flag. They say it's not really flapping, but on top of it, there's a rod on top of the flag that keeps it erect,
right.
And then it's not really flapping, but it's wrinkled. And also there's you can go to museums where you have the Smithsonian, where you have the actual lunar capsule or the lander, and then the little rover vehicle, and you can see how it can be folded up, and in fact, it can't fit into that. And again, you can find some very good web pages where you have actual scientists going through the main points of the conspiracy theorists one by one, and saying that what you see as a mystery is not, it's not really the mystery that it appears to be. But I think just a number of people involved that would take to pull something like that off. It's just so big that it's very difficult to believe that this could be kept hidden for such a long time.
And that's the funny thing, is that, first of all, we obviously want to do this as a country. We need to get back on, and as you mentioned, we need to get out there. We need to beat those Russians. We got to do all that sort of thing. But we had repeated trips there. And again, the conspiracy theorists will then go, well, that was in the 70s. Why haven't we been back? Well, what the heck else would we learn that we've already been there a couple of times? There's nothing there. There's dust. other than the conspiracy theorists who come up with, well, there's pyramid formations and there's other kinds of weird things happening that we have no other factual scientific proof of, why would we go back to a dead area? There's nothing for us to do there.
Right. And really the next steps that, as I understand that really scientists would want to take would be building, lunar camps and modules and things on a lunar basis up there. But this is so incredibly expensive that with the financial situation that the country is in, and has been through the bad downturn of the economy in the 70s and recessions that we've had, I don't think any politician could get the support from the country to spend the billions and billions of dollars it would take to do all these things.
So while we've got a couple of minutes here left, Dr. Donovan, what have you got cooking, and what else can we look forward to from you moving forward as far as things about conspiracy theories or just mass media and the interest that we have in all the topics that we talk about on a day-to-day basis? What are you working on?
Well, right now I'm working on a book where I'm looking at the same kind of cultural fascination with the end of the world and the apocalypse, and we had the 2012 craze, and it's not going away. I mean, we still have a lot of movies, TV shows all the time where the concern is always the end of the world, and I'm looking at how pop culture is reflecting this. I'm asking the same kind of questions about what is it that has us obsessing about the end of the world so much right now.
And which is such a strange thing, because this comes up every once in a while, and maybe in a little bit more intensity with some people. A couple of years ago, and I can't remember the name of the gentleman because it doesn't matter. He comes out every 10, 15 years, and it's the end of the world, and then it's the rapture, and then it doesn't happen. He's a religious leader on the West Coast. But the old station that I worked at, WECK, actually had his folks on, and I asked them to come on my show, but part of the caveat was, when the world didn't end, they had to assure me that they would come on, and they wouldn't do it. They said, no, we're not going to be here. And I said, okay, but just the craziness that you survive, would you come back on the show? They said no. That's the kind of stuff that is kind of the tinfoil hat realm that we need to be aware of and kind of avoid. But these people still have followers that believe everything that they say. To me, that's scary.
Oh, sure. And of course, they get conspiratorial, too, because they're going to say that, well, the reason that the rest of the world is not paying attention to us, or they're treating us like a bunch of kooks, is because there's a conspiracy, and, the Antichrist is controlling the media, and they're trying to make us look foolish, or, the elite have built their secret bunkers under Denver airport, and they're conspiring to keep the end of the world from everybody else, and they're going to hide, and they'll be the ones to survive. So yeah, the two topics definitely blend together.
If there was one conspiracy theory that is out there that you either have researched or maybe haven't, but you would like to know a definitive answer to, what would that be? And would you even bother pursuing it to have that answer for yourself? Would you share it, or would you allow it to continue to be a part of the folklore and the wonderful discussions that we can all have about conspiracy theories?
Mm-hmm. I think I would definitely like to have, one way or the other, an answer on alien visitations. Are these UFOs? Are they real or aren't they? What does the government know? And I would share the answer. One way or the other. If it's true or if it's not true. That's probably it would be the biggest story of all of history. Have we made contact with creatures from another world? So I'd say that's a concern that's been around for so many decades. I'd like to have a definitive answer to that.
It's really funny. Somebody actually just wrote in the live chat room, and this has nothing to do with the conversation, but it kind of actually just hits a chord with me. The words "truth of conspiracy" just popped up. the truth of conspiracy, which I think is actually interesting because it's exactly what we're talking about. Even though some of this stuff, as I mentioned, might be kind of tinfoil hat sort of things, is there a little bit of truth to a lot of this, and is that the way we should approach all of this?
Oh, probably there's a grain of truth in the sense that if people in power can hold on to power longer, or and this is probably one of the reasons that we're never concerned with positive conspiracies, but human beings being what they are, most people, when they have power and they can abuse it and get away with it, they tend to do it. Unfortunately, we don't have as many idealistic good people as probably the world should have. So probably that's like we said before, that it's probably the one thing that is good about conspiratorial thinking. That it's good to have a degree of suspicion about people in power, and the government, and in big business, whether you're concerned about assassinations or aliens or what's going on in secret government bases. That probably, unfortunately, if people can abuse the power to their own benefit, many of them do. So maybe just into this way. I remember once reading, I think it was someplace, I forget the source, an interview with Chris Carter, who produced the X-Files TV show, where he was asked about whether or not he personally believes about all of the stuff that his TV show dealt with, and he said that he tends to be personally skeptical. However, he wanted to create this TV show as a metaphor that people always need to ask questions and be concerned about whether or not people who have power are abusing it, because many times we see that they will do that if they can.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I'm going to end the show on this note. Earlier this week, I decided that my autobiography has to have a specific title, and the title is going to be, I Never Said Everything I Said Was True. So maybe that would be the perfect way to talk about conspiracy theories or everything else that I do here on The Edge of the Unknown. Dr. Donovan, it has been a pleasure for you to be a guest of The Edge. I thank you so much for hanging out with me on a Sunday night. We can do this again, I hope.
Oh, definitely. I would love to. Thanks so much for having me. It was a great time.
Excellent. Everybody, check out Dr. Barna Donovan's book, Conspiracy Films, A Tour of Dark Places in the American Conscious. You can also check out his blog at Donovan Media. That's just the name of it. So if you search for that at blogspot.com, you'll find it. Barna, Barna, Donovan .blogspot.com. You can find out more information from him there. He's got a number of other cool books. You can find them on Amazon.com. They are downloadable on Kindle. It has been a blast. Everybody, we have to wrap things up. Thanks for everybody for hanging out in the live chat room. Thanks for those of you who have called in. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We will be back again next week with a very interesting guest. We're going to be talking to Dr. Joyce Michael Flynn. She is going to be talking about near-death experiences. Hopefully you will be able to catch us then. You want to get on board? That would be awesome. You can always shoot me an email at any time during the week. If you want to, you can just shoot me an email at theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. I always respond to all of my emails personally, and we will figure out whatever we need to figure out, whether it's a comment about the show or something that you'd like to hear. Love to hear from you. In the meantime, find me on Facebook as well, The Edge of the Unknown at gmail.com, the address there, Facebook, Edge of the Unknown Radio Show. To those of you who decided to be jerks in the live chat room and try to disrupt the show, I guess you failed because we kicked you out, and yeah, we have your IP addresses. Don't bother listening again. Oh my goodness, all this controversy. It might be a conspiracy. You'll have to ask Dr. Barna Donovan the next time he is on The Edge of the Unknown. Everybody, again, thanks so much. Seattle wins. The Broncos win. That is your Super Bowl. We'll be back next week with Dr. Joyce Michael Flynn. And remember, when you stop questioning, you've stopped thinking. My name is Mark. This is The Edge of the Unknown. This is the All One Broadcast Radio Network. We'll see you next time.